Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, Myanmar opens up to the media.
Our Asia correspondent John Sparks reports now from Rangoon.
Two questions. Why and how long will it last?
We're just going home. So.
Bidding bye-bye to B-Sky B. So far, the phone hacking scandal has cost James Murdoch 2 jobs and counting.
Oh!
Journalists in Hungary say the government is out to muzzle them. And there's only one place Mitt Romney will ever make it as a rapper, and that is in our web video of the week.
I'm not looking for a colony on the moon, just for someone to blame.
The military junta ruling Myanmar has had a fairly simple media strategy: keep Myanmar out of the news and keep journalists out of Myanmar. However, coverage of the April 1st parliamentary elections suggests that the country formerly known as Burma is changing the way it deals with the media. Not only were foreign journalists allowed in to cover the story, or at least most of it, but opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi's by-election victory was actually announced on state-owned television. Now, there's good reason to suspect that this new openness is a calculated, strategic decision by the government to end economic sanctions against Myanmar and to attract the foreign investment the country badly needs. But these are significant changes nonetheless. Our starting point this week is Yangon, Myanmar.
Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Daniel has spent the last 4 days in Burma following its first tentative steps towards democracy.
The most remarkable thing about being in Myanmar at this time is the fact that we are here.
Foreign journalists and international observers have been given the widest access they've ever had.
You can see the journalists are standing, filming openly on the street, via satellite link-up, reporting live from Rangoon. So it's quite amazing to see this.
We can go live now to Rangoon.
I think it is a win-win solution, and I really love to see the changes.
Fergal King, BBC News, Rangoon.
Appearances can be revealing. Journalists on the streets of Yangon reporting in the open are news in Myanmar.
CNN has not been allowed to cover the polls.
This is a country where the last general election, less than 2 years ago, was conducted in near darkness.
We can't get a live signal out of their journalists, foreign journalists not allowed in the country.
In 2010, foreign journalists were not allowed to come into the country. So we had to come in on tourist visas and very much sneak around the city. Eventually we were chased by undercover police officers around town.
The BBC's Sue Lloyd-Roberts did enter the country as a tourist.
3 years ago we were working with one UK news team who wanted to do a satellite link-up from Burma, and it was a very big deal in how they would get the equipment in there.
We went undercover to meet one of the NLD's leaders.
How they would be able to broadcast secretly and get that out, and how they wouldn't be arrested on the way out once it had been broadcast.
So it is a pretty amazing turnaround to now be invited by the government here to cover these by-elections involving Aung San Suu Kyi and to, like I say, have freedom. It's a big turnaround.
Aung San Suu Kyi's personal election victory was noteworthy, as was the way it was announced on state-owned channels. Suu Kyi is a symbol of resistance in Myanmar, but she's not the only one. For 20 years, DVB, the Democratic Voice of Burma, has been beaming news into Myanmar from Norway and Thailand. Now DVB says it will open 2 bureaus inside the country with the government's blessing. Mazima is another journalistic exile that's coming home. The publication has been based in India, but already has opened an office in Yangon, again above board and legal.
A lot has changed. For example, there is a vibrant private media here, which is doing well in terms of business model. The people are talking very openly, and I'm positive that this process would continue. Of course, whether there are risks or not, yes, there are risks in every transition, and these risks have to be taken.
And other journalistic institutions are being created. For 2 decades, IIWIN has been the Associated Press's eyes and ears in Myanmar, reporting for the news agency despite severe restrictions. Now she's forming a union for journalists.
I thought that there is a change of government. It's more than a year now, so I thought, the local journalists should also have a journalist club, association, or union, whatever it is, because it's good to have a group, mainly not just to promote the freedom of expression, but mainly to protect the journalists.
Often in politics, when changes are made, the question is not just why, but why now? The answer in Myanmar's case has to do with economics. This once resource-rich country of about 60 million people is impoverished. Its high inflation is exacerbated by economic sanctions imposed by the EU and the US. Sanctions the Americans have already said will be eased.
They have to change because of global situations. They can't control the wave of globalization. They know very well, some of leaders. That is why they decided to change. If they don't want to change or if they can't change, they will lose everything. So they need survive. If they need survive, they have to change.
Allowing the press freedom is one of the key things that they will be judged on by the international community. They know that. But they're still only making quite limited reforms. One person in Burma put it like, we've had 1% freedom, now we've got 4% freedom. It's wonderful. Freedom for us has increased by 400%, but we still only have very limited real freedom.
This is what the government wants to see. They want to make it look good, especially for the international community, because they want to spread the message like this election is free and fair and media can report everything in the perfect way. But I still see there are some restriction to the media and fairness depending on which media you are working on.
The remaining restrictions include a virtual ban on reporting on ethnic fighting in northern Myanmar. And the government allows foreign media much more leeway in their coverage than domestic journalists enjoy.
A guerrilla unit escorts us to outlooks on the outskirts of Kachin State.
The larger issue has to do with the law. The relaxing of restrictions so far has not come through legislative changes, but through governmental decree. A new media law is coming, but journalists have yet to see it and will reserve judgment until they do.
One detail really that has emerged is that the Press Scrutiny and Registration Division may be disbanded. This is a department where the local newspapers must send their entire copies. Every single article they write must go to this department before they print it, and it must be censored. And often they will get their articles back and they'll have huge red lines right through an article, or a red ring around a certain sentence that must be removed before it goes to print.
I only want to see that this new media law doesn't become a new tool for the government to impose further restrictions on the freedom of the press and expression and freedom of the journalists in their activities.
That's the concern in Myanmar today, that these new media freedoms will prove temporary, illusory. However, the government official in charge of information is unequivocal on that the changes are here for good, and the new media law will ensure that.
We have to have the new law before the end of the 2012. So when the new law is enacted, the old will be abolished and there will be no censorship.
There will be no censorship in Myanmar. We'll put our own red circle around that quote, and as they say in the news business, watch this space. Our Global Village Voices now on the coverage of the story in Myanmar.
I have seen a difference in these elections compared with the ones in 2010 in regards to media freedom. There's the obvious examples of more reports on Aung San Suu Kyi and NLD activities as well as other activists. I think, though, a major problem in regards to media freedom is the only people who really have internet access in Burma is in the main cities. So in conflict areas and ethnic areas where communities are deeply marginalized, they do not have access to these internet technologies or other communications.
They are allowing journalists to do in Naypyidaw, Rangoon and Mandalay for the election campaign. That is good, that is a positive step. But still the restriction on media, those laws are still there. So these journalists, they can, the regime can arrest them anytime. So these laws need to be removed.
The military are allowing freedom in the media, and it's an experiment on their part. But the real test of this will be when they start looking at what the minority language media are saying out in the areas where they are fighting a war, one of the longest wars in world history. And that's the real test.